What's going on, everyone? My name's Alex. That's Eileen, and you are watching Straight to the Chicane Podcast, where we talk Formula One. And this week, we're talking Miami, the Miami GP. We're in America. It's the biggest
celebrity spectacle
ever. So, yeah, I think we just got to get into it. Eileen, how are you? How was the weekend for you? Did you enjoy the race?
Yes.
Did you watch practice or anything like that? Tell me.
Oh, God. Well, I did. Actually, I did.
I know you told me. You kept calling me.
I did keep myself entertained. I don't know how I was able to watch it and you weren't able to stay on schedule, but I had a bachelorette party this weekend in Arizona. It was a good time. We enjoyed ourselves. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We dressed as men. It was great.
And that's... Yeah, I saw photos. It really looked like you guys had a good time.
We had a good time, but we still fit in some Formula One.
You did. You kept calling...
I was able to educate my friends a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk about Drive to Survive, talk about the Mercedes Red Bull drama, talk about the Verstappen versus Lewis, all of the good stuff. So hopefully we'll have some new fans.
Yeah, and speaking of new fans, if you guys are, thank you for choosing us. Please like, subscribe if you guys are returning. Thank you. Welcome back. I think we need to talk about some of the gossip, anything that kind of happened leading up into the weekend, because it was a short turnaround.
It was.
You know, it's one of those the flyaway races, as they call it.
Just a few days from Baku to America, and most of them came in early. There was a lot of events. There was a lot of extra stuff to do, a lot of promos.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of the drivers like coming to America now that, you know, it seems like the media's now really being intense. They're pretty much celebrities here in this country, too, now. You know, they're going to football games. Football players are coming there to their race. They were at basketball games. They were.
No, apparently Lewis was the captain of his basketball team in high school. I learned that. That's something new I learned this weekend. So, because he was like swishing free throws, undefeated. So that was interesting. But yeah,
Lewis dropped his clothing line during the Miami GP as well. So if you haven't checked out his website.
His plus 44.
Yeah.
He had a pop-up, yes.
Yep. And so now that's all online.
Secure the bag.
Yes.
But Tommy Hilfiger and Mercedes really dropped some fire stuff too this week.
Yeah, there was a lot of the clothing stuff, and especially the specific Miami branded stuff like there was last year when we went. I'm underneath the hoodie I got on the Miami Red Bull shirt.
Yeah. And I think we've decided that the unbeknownst colors of Miami are aqua and hot pink.
Yeah.
Everything
you're right.
is aqua and hot pink in Miami.
Let me ask you, what do you think? So this year, Red Bull is doing like a custom graphics on the car, and they're doing it at a couple of races throughout the year.
They're doing it all the American races.
So this is the first one of the year in Miami. One of the contestants, they voted and they picked this one. What did you think of the livery?
I thought it was a little underwhelming.
I was as well.
I think it's the color story that with the backdrop of navy blue, it just didn't really pop.
Okay.
Didn't do it for me. I think when I think of their one-off liveries, like the white Red Bull, that was like fire. And then it's like we just kind of threw in some pastel squiggly lines. It didn't feel like a whole lot.
Yeah, and typically teams that do the one-off liveries, they have had luck. Mm-hmm. It seems to be cursed, but I think
bad luck.
I think this year
not the Red Bull, not the white Red Bull though.
I think this year they broke the curse because it was the Ferrari when they did the 1000 race livery. Their car really did poorly, and then it was the Mercedes. Back in, I think, 2020 when they did...
they all dressed up.
Their home race, and they did a one-off livery for that as well.
No, Red Bull beat the curse when they had the white Red Bull.
So they're just immune to the curse.
Because it was 2021, and Mercedes was trying to clown and be like, we did a one-off livery once, too.
Yeah.
And Red Bull was like, hey, 1, 2. It was in Turkey.
So if you don't know already, we're at Red Bull this weekend. They did a 1, 2. With the surprise. It was pretty impressive to see.
It was it was a good weekend. I think going into it, qualifying was really exciting. There was a lot of good stuff that happened.
Yeah, you're right.
But Red Bull's just so far above the pace. I mean, we're 5 out of 5 wins go to Red Bull this season.
Yeah, you're right about that. Going into qualifying, people were talking that there might only be one Mercedes making it into Q3, and sure enough, it really happened.
Oh my God.
I know. Yeah, Mercedes in practice they looked okay.
Practice
one, they looked.
Practice one,
they looked good, and then they fell behind from then on. George Russell did I think he was testing some new equipment in practice one, and immediately knew that he didn't like it and said I needed to do a change. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, it's going to take like 30 minutes, and he didn't care. Do the change, and then they did. Mm-hmm. So he was able to get that at least figured out. But yeah, they were kind of on the back foot right after practice one, all the way through the weekend and into qualifying. They weren't at the top of the spear.
Yeah,
you know,
it was an interesting weekend. But they haven't really been performing very well, I feel like, on Saturdays just in general. Sunday's definitely a little bit of a better day for them.
Yeah, typically. So, you're right about that. Yeah. They always seem to be like maybe hiding something a little bit too. I feel like
they're hiding. I just feel like they're better when it comes to race pace and tire management.
Okay.
Like, definitely when you look at comparison to, like, Ferrari.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, their single lap pace with Ferrari is just phenomenal. I mean, look at Charles Leclerc's been on podium.
On pole.
On pole, 4 of the last 5 or something like that? 3 of the last 5?
I don't know if it's been that long.
Are that many?
No, I think Baku, he had the 3 in a row. But no, I mean, this year it's been a little bit tougher for him. But they've definitely been more competitive on Saturday.
Yeah.
So.
So what else do we know? We know that going into the weekend still that Lewis is still got a contract that's kind of up that they're talking about. That was mentioned, right? Mm-hmm. And then what else do we have going on?
Oh my God, I'm blanking. I mean, there was that. There was, I mean, obviously the big thing I think leading up to this weekend was that there was a 6-point variance between the two. We talked about it last time.
Right.
What was it going to look like, from a championship perspective between two drivers of the same team?
So I would say from looking at this weekend in hindsight, seems like they're on the same team, but they kind of had separate race plans. Mm-hmm. One started on medium, one started on hard, and there was no concession on letting anyone over when the passes were happening between the two teams. They kept it respectful and kept space.
Yeah.
But there was no one made it easy. No one gave up the spot. Max had to earn it. Mm-hmm. But I mean, he was gonna earn it anyway because he had the better tires.
Who performed better this weekend overall?
Man, that's tough because Max is the winner and he came from ninth. Mm-hmm. So he had a struggle in qualifying. He missed his lap, and it was a banker lap kind of early on. That's what everyone else did in the Q3. And then there was a red flag kind of late in the session, and that caused a lot of people that didn't have a good first lap, which was Max because he made a mistake. He got, put on the back foot, and that's what caused him to be in ninth. But from going from ninth to first fairly quickly, it seemed like by lap 17?
I think it was like in P2 lap 14.
Yeah, somewhere in the early teens.
It was sure. Like immediately.
Yeah, I had his onboard up the whole time, and it took him a second to get, passing people, but he pretty much made passes from like lap. As soon as DRS.
I mean, he was still like pretty aggressive driving.
Very aggressive.
Pretty aggressive for being the championship leader and like being kind of in the hot mess mix.
I just think his cars are so much faster.
Well, I think it's that. And then, of course, the other teams are like, well, we're just not even going to deal with battling him at this point because our battle isn't with him.
That's right.
So, I mean, I think there could have been a little bit more of a holdup, but teams were like, we'd rather not waste our time. We'd rather not jeopardize our own race.
He kept having the inside line on the back straightaway in the braking area. He would take the inside and always kind of like they gave it to him for the most part at the beginning of the race, and
well, okay.
DRS kicked in and then he was able to make a pass on two people.
He had DRS the whole time, but I think if we're asking the question of who was better this weekend overall, would your answer be Max?
I think it has to be Max. I mean, he made from ninth. It hasn't been done, right? It hasn't been done in...
I mean, he went from 14th last year to first, so it's been done.
Oh, I know, but I think ninth to first or whatever it was.
It hasn't been done since Niki Lauda.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean he didn't go from 10th last year to first or from last in Russia in 2021 to second.
Yeah.
There's been some pretty
I'm
pristine things. But I do think when you look at it from a qualifying perspective, like Saturday, it was, I think he won on a contingency because Leclerc brought out the red flag. But, he aborted his lap, then went in, and then was coming out. But when you look at the times in Q2, Verstappen was faster than the pole time of Q3.
He was.
So if you're thinking logistics-wise,
he probably still would have pulled.
He would have been on pole.
Yeah. You're right about that.
And he was on a good lap up until his mistake.
That probably would have happened. Yes, you're right.
And then, would he have won by 40 seconds?
Possibly. He won by, 5 seconds?
Yeah. And then the next person was 21 seconds back?
Yes.
So, it was Red Bull 1-2. Red Bull ran away with it.
Yeah, and then Fernando again finding his spot on the podium. One of these days.
Yeah, so it's the third time that the three of them have shared the podium out of 5 races. So over 50%, which is pretty crazy. So Alonso was lonely today.
He was so lonely that he was able to watch the scoreboard, and he made the comment to his race engineer about he enjoyed watching Lance's pass on turn 1. And they're like, how do you see that? But there's a couple jumbo screens.
He's always watching the TV.
Yeah, I think he's just hyper alert, paying attention to everything that's going on.
It's
he had
crazy.
He had nobody around him. He was kind of just driving his own race. Yeah. I think he just had enough opportunity to see what was going on the big screens, I guess.
He's always got, I feel like he's very vocal on the radio.
I think that's gotten a lot better too, of later years.
Like him being more positive?
Well, definitely more positive.
Well, what Alonso would tell you is because people have been definitely talking to him like, hey, you are like such a team player. Like you are like such a great teammate. You're just so supportive, like sharing your brake strategy, whatever. And he's like, I've always been that way. It just wasn't publicized before. So, but I've also heard Alonso kind of be a little nasty on the radio too.
Yeah, I don't believe that one bit really.
But I think Alonso is in such a good place mentally because his team is like, he's got a competitive car. He literally said this weekend, this is the fastest car I've ever had. And he's won 2 championships, and he's saying this Aston Martin is the fastest car.
Yeah, he is being very consistent right now. Granted, so is Red Bull. They're pretty damn consistent too. But, consistency matters, especially when you got a long season, and this being the longest season ever for Formula One. Mm-hmm. He could find himself in the hunt if things start shaking up differently in the Red Bull area. Those two just need to hit each other once and be out.
And we need some spice. We need some drama.
Yeah, I think, you don't really remember the years so much of when just the pure dominance from Mercedes. And, a couple more years like this, people are going to get bored. Mm-hmm. But I think it's still early on, and we'll see what happens. Hopefully, by the next race, people will have some upgrades. Now, granted, I'm sure Red Bull is going to bring some upgrades too, but they need to get a little bit closer to these backfield teams, which is fucking P2 all the way down to the last team. All need to do something to step up to what Red Bull's saying, because like you said earlier,
it's like 112 points from P1 to P2 in the constructors right now.
And they're, how far ahead would they be finishing? They just finished this race over 20 seconds ahead from the next competitor,
Watching Red Bull overtake cars on track today, in every race this season, it's like the other car is like going fast, but it looks like it's sitting still.
Yeah. And
it's just like, shoo.
It is.
100% overtake of the day was Max. Turn 1, overtaking 2 cars.
It was
100% hands down.
It was nice. They were battling each other. I think it was Leclerc, and I think it was Magnussen. It was the Haas. Yep. Yeah. So they were kind of fighting themselves, and Magnussen didn't have DRS, so he kind of fought in the middle while Ferrari was trying to go on the outside, and Max just dipped.
Max was like, psing.
He just dipped with his DRS right on the inside, and
it was the easiest overtake I think we've ever seen. But then it was like, whoa.
It was pretty epic.
Yeah,
it was pretty fast, and and you got to say that the team that's broadcasting this, they cut that really well because they were kind of going back and forth between a couple different cameras to show all that.
It was good.
Yeah, it was good television, you know. There was surprise compared to last year. So last year we were there, we were at the race, and there wasn't as many passes. It was more...
It did feel better this year because Miami was pretty boring last year.
Yeah, so this year they changed a couple things. They resurfaced the whole entire track.
Which, why?
Well, because they complained about the track before just wasn't really working, and there was they weren't able to do any passing. So
there was also porpoising last year too.
Yeah, and so they didn't like the bumps. There was bumps and things like that because at the end of the day, once Formula One leaves, it's a car park, and that's where people park for Miami Dolphin games. You know what I mean? So they clear out.
Who's paying for it? Formula One or the Miami Dolphins?
I bet the city of Miami, the Miami Garden, the whole entire that whole compound, that whole place is probably fronting the bill.
Yeah.
Because it's drawing in record number of crowd. There was over
30,000 more people this year.
So I think it was like over 250,000.
Although it didn't look like there was that many people on TV.
I think there were,
I mean, I don't like when I can see empty seats in the grandstands, like multiples.
Yeah, but you got to remember some of those people that probably had those seats might have had access to other areas too. And maybe they were there instead of at their seats. I don't know.
Possibly.
Possibly. When we went, we only had general admission last year, so it seemed pretty crowded. Granted, it wasn't nearly as crowded as the Coda race in Austin.
I think with Miami though, there's so many different like hangout areas, like the little marina, the pools, the cabanas, all the extra stuff that they've added in. Whereas Coda, it's like mostly grandstands and open general admission areas.
Because it's on like a rolling meadow hills.
It's on like a real racetrack.
Yeah, it's a real racetrack.
So, so they resurfaced the track.
They did.
What else did they do?
They tightened a couple turns and
shortened the DRS.
Yep, you're right about that. Yes. 75 meters, which I think might have helped.
Which they did last race too, which didn't feel like it did anything. But
last race it did not help in Baku. They said the racers and drivers said that they didn't really, they didn't need that to be shortened. But here, it seemed like it did help here.
It did. I felt like there was a lot closer racing.
Mm-hmm. And I think
not at the front.
I think with the new, and we saw in practice and qualifying that, with the new track being very slick because there wasn't any grip down, that if they were going offline, and they were sliding and slipping and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, it wasn't everybody. It was just, it seemed like Ferrari and Williams, or I forget who else.
There was a lot of people having issues, I feel like.
Early on.
Yeah.
But then it got better and better because they became more grip, but then it rained too. So I was hoping for a little bit less grip during the race, but I was wrong. Mm-mm. I was wrong.
I think everybody was either on like the hard to medium or medium to hard strategy. So it was like it went one way or another with the race today. But I do feel like the DRS being shortened did kind of open up a little bit of tighter racing for some time. There was the gaps that opened up that were still pretty significant, like, of course, from Alonso to P4. And then, at one point, I feel like Sainz to, obviously, P6 with the penalty. It still was a pretty decent gap. But, yeah, I feel like it was better. For the first, definitely maybe 10, 12 laps, minus Verstappen, everybody was within 1.5 seconds, 2 seconds max, which was pretty nice to see.
You're right about that. And then for a little while, there was also just a long DRS train for 4 or 5 cars too that couldn't see. Even so, early on, even Lewis, he was stuck behind.
He was in 13th
and just couldn't get past Albon.
I was I was going insane. I'm like, oh my god, if he doesn't get past Alex, I'm gonna go crazy.
I just think they got DRS going, especially early on, and there was just they were all kind of,
and it's you see them get so close. You see them get to 1/10 or less than a tenth, and then you're like, oh, it's about to be an overtake, and then they pull out of the DRS zone.
Yeah.
So, and everybody has DRS, so it's
And I think they were kind of figuring out how to conserve the tires the correct way too, because it's hot in Miami, and those tires are probably cooking. And I didn't honestly think, I don't know what you thought, but I didn't think it was only going to be a one stop. I figured most of them were going to be a 2-stopper.
I know. I feel like it was a one-stop last year, though, too.
It was, I think. I do believe it was.
And it was hot last year, crazy, crazy hot. So, but we also had safety cars and yellow flags and all sorts of stuff. Last year, we didn't have one DNF, one yellow flag, and one red. We had nothing.
Was this the first race this year?
I think so.
with that?
With nothing. With no retirements.
Yeah.
No yellow flag, no red flag.
I mean, there was a little bit of damage. We saw, unfortunately, Logan Sargent, he had a little bit of an issue. Had to come in at second lap or whatever.
It was like the second or third lap.
Yeah, he had a wing change and some new tires, but it was because of the wing damage. And then on the first lap, there was a little bit of contact with, I think, Lando Norris and Nick DeVries. Missed the braking zone, missed his braking point, and pretty much, locked up and slid right into the back of Lando. I don't know how much damage between the two cars. Something popped off on Nick's car, but I didn't see really any damage with Lando. It just kind of missed the race up, but they were in the back of the field anyway, so it was. We
expected carnage in the first lap, and it was pretty clean. Besides
that, it was really clean.
Yeah, so I'm like, not much. I expected there was going to at least be 2 crashes. I was like, there's definitely going to be at least a safety car. Someone's not finishing. I said Sargent. I think just because of home race, bad luck. The jitters, whatever, but we didn't have anything. I kept waiting for it too. Something's going to happen. Something's going to happen. There's going to be somebody that loses it, especially with just looking at how the tires were.
I mean,
they were starting to look rough in a lot of cases. So
they were just wearing really funny. At one point, Max's tires had a dark line, and then it seemed like it would go away, and the whole thing would be even again, and then it would show up again. Yeah. I feel like the tires were just burning off. The hards were running really well.
Mm-hmm. I bet you if they could have, they would have done a hard, because everyone was so happy with the hards.
They were. Race. Everyone was really moving with their hards. I was expecting maybe a couple blowouts, but I don't think that's going to happen anymore. I think Pirelli's figured out that.
We haven't seen any tire blowouts.
Not this year, and
since Qatar, since 2021, I feel like.
Yeah, Baku.
Unless they get a puncture from somebody hitting them, but
that's not what I'm talking about.
Even in reality too, where there should have been a puncture, like Perez was saying last race, should have had a puncture from hitting the wall.
Yeah,
and he didn't. That just goes to show you how well the tires are turning.
Yeah, the tires are really well built this year. They figured out a few things, and it seems like they can take a little bit of damage.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. What else? Lewis ended up making a couple passes. He started figuring a few things out. And then,
what do you mean? He made up 7 places.
Yeah, which is not bad. So he's was he in the hunt for driver of the day? Who won driver of the day?
Max Verstappen.
Yeah. Okay. So that makes sense. I mean,
yeah, I missed the vote by 1 lap, but I would have voted for Max for sure. I think when you look at it, he's on the back foot. He's in the same car. Perez was on pole. To be able to catch him, to be able to be P2 after 13 laps. It's pretty impressive. Yeah. So, and that overtake. The overtake was what did it for me. I was like, this is what's up.
You're right. And honestly, once the race kind of got in its flow, in the late teens, in the early 20s, it kind of made sense that the hard tires were really, everyone was liking them. Mm-hmm. And it kind of seemed like, all right, the hard tire, starting on the hard tire might have been the best move. Yeah. Now, granted, Perez probably couldn't have started in the hard tire, being P1. I think he was limited on not using that tire because he would have probably got beat off the line.
And not even that. Probably by Alonso, 100%. Because I think, the top 7 or 8 started on mediums. Yeah. But Christian said all the data, and whether we know it or not, he said all the data pointed that the hard tire was, going to put you on the back foot
for the first lap, pretty much.
It was still going to perform strong though.
Yeah, lap, like I was saying, in the lap 20, 24, somewhere in that area, it really dawned on me that was the better strategy. And as long as Max was going to be able to go as long as he did,
40 laps. I think he went 43 laps.
So it's just the track is cooling down a little bit because the sun was getting lower. Mm-hmm. They were getting more rubber down. The cars were getting lighter because of the gas. Yeah. And he was about to go on mediums. His strategy was just lining up for him.
All the drivers that started the race on mediums were on the mediums with on the mediums at the beginning with heavy fuel. Yeah. And so it was completely opposite for everybody else. And when you look at it too, it's interesting. With the exception of Alonso, I mean, he only lost one place, which I think he expected to be P3. Like, he even said, we're going to try and, overtake Checo at the beginning just to lead the race for a minute, but we know we'll go back to where we need to be in position. Yeah. So he knew that's probably best case scenario would be P3 for him. But everybody else, like, when I think about Ferrari, like, what happened to Leclerc this weekend? And, I feel like last weekend, yes, he didn't win. He had pole on the sprint, on, race day, whatever, and had a great weekend. Terrible start from him.
Yep.
Got overtaken by the Haas.
Haas looked good.
Yeah, the Haas, both cars had good pace, but weird. And then he was, like, stuck. Then he had to pit, and then he was, like, literally stuck in 13th.
Yeah.
It was kind of like Lewis at the beginning of the race, but just different strategy. But Carlos typically doesn't perform as strong as Leclerc on the weekend, and he was looking confident this weekend.
And had a good race going. I mean, had that first stint before he came in for his tire change and his penalty that he ended up getting. He was looking good. Like, it was holding form, staying right up there in the top of the field, and came in for a pit stop. Locked up right at the pit stop line.
I saw it happen, and he was like flying in the pit lane. Yeah. I was like, what's going on?
But it was really quick, and like they had a really quick fucking.
Oh, it was a 2.2 second pit stop.
And then he was out, and then I was like, man, I bet he's gonna get flagged, and not more than like what 1 or 2 laps.
Oh, it was like
that.
They were automatically already talking about it. So.
Oh no.
What happened?
Hopefully nothing. Let's keep going. Sorry.
Okay. So anyways, I don't know who the announcer was, though, that did say.
Yeah.
They saw how fast he was coming into the pit. I think it's the American. The American announcer was like, oh, we're right there. And he just, like, blew through and was definitely speeding.
Yeah, speeding for sure.
So they haven't recorded how fast he was actually going in the pit lane, but he did get a 5-second penalty. But it didn't affect his race at all. He kept position. Lewis was right behind him. He got P6. So, pretty good weekend from Carlos.
Yeah.
Not bad, but definitely Ferrari's lacking race pace. Like, there's something going on there.
I think they struggle. That car struggles particularly in the really slow corners. And this course, which is nice, is it has a mixture of all. It has a couple of good straightaways, has a couple of high-speed, medium-speed turns, and then it has a really good, intricate, low-speed turns. And you can see, even Mercedes, their car is so stiff that in that
they hate the slow corners.
That even in their single was so stiff, they were riding on 3 wheels. But I think Ferrari, anyways, they have a car that's just not the greatest in a slow speed turn. It doesn't really stick well. And we even saw that even in practice, and I think it was in qualifying that they were coming out of that slow speed hairpin onto the last straightaway, and they were like just putting down too much power and kind of kicking that rear end out a lot. And I feel like that was most
Is that where Leclerc crashed both times in practice and in qualifying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
he was on the limits. Now, but Fred Vassar is still giving him a lot of credit. Like, I was watching the post-quali stuff yesterday, and he was like, that's what we want. We want him on the edge. We want him pushing it to the limit.
He pushes it and finds where it is and sometimes goes over.
I know, but in order for him to be in championship contention, he's got to stop making these little mistakes. And he knows it.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I love about him. And, like, I feel like he's more self-critical of himself than anybody else is. Might be his downfall because he could be in his head about it. But the one thing I will say about Ferrari is I keep saying it every race that maybe it's a curse that I'm cursing on myself. Their engine hasn't blown up yet this year.
Yeah, and you keep bringing it up.
And I'm like, there's got to be a Ferrari engine that's going to blow this race. It's either a Haas, it's either a Ferrari. It's got to be, it's something. And
it's funny, you keep saying that.
We haven't seen any reliability issues.
No, we haven't.
With the exception of Alpine last weekend had a tough weekend, because practice for Gasly, race issues. They bounced back this week. And then George, that one race where he DNF'd. But I think there was something stuck that caused his DNF.
It wasn't an actual...
So it wasn't like their engine actually blew. So,
nope.
I know we're only 5 races in, but last year, we saw the 2 Red Bulls the first race. We saw Max's engine go out in Australia. We had issues with Ferrari and Baku, both DNF'd last year. So I'm like waiting for the shoe to drop. And it feels like it's not going to.
Yeah.
So maybe we figured something out from a reliability perspective, but I do keep calling it every weekend.
You do. And you're probably going to call it next weekend, too.
I probably am. Well, actually not next weekend because we're not racing.
Yeah, we have one weekend off.
For sure, there's going to be some reliability problems with the triple header.
Yeah.
Like, that's going to kick it off like 100%.
So that's the thing. They're giving them one break, a week off, so they can go into the triple header.
Yeah.
They're going to, our next race is in Imola, Monaco, and then I forget where the last of the triple header is.
It's Spain.
Barcelona. Yep, that's right.
Which we know this is like the time that they always bring upgrades every year. So it's like we know Mercedes is bringing upgrades in Imola. We know they are.
They talked about it enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's what I'm thinking. I'm like fearful. Is it going to be that they bring this big upgrade and it's like all this rah rah, like we're bringing this upgrade and it's going to be a 10th? It's going to be like 2/10.
It could very well be, or it could be a whole new car.
I hope it's a whole new car. The W14B.
And I said, yeah, yeah.
The W14B, so we can see some fun competition. I think until we see Checo get really aggressive with Max, there's not really going to be any front-running challenges. And we know that Max and Lewis race each other differently. 100%.
They do. And, the thing about the two teammates racing each other, I think it's tough.
Well, because the team boss is going to be like, what is wrong with you?
And the thing is Checo has a contract that he needs to get signed. And so if he's doing something stupid, he's going to jeopardize his career because there's somebody just waiting.
I mean, Checo even said this weekend, he was like, listen, I'm here to fight for the championship. Like, I think he's at a place where he is feeling like I'm in contention. Because even after this weekend, he's not out of the contention. He's like 12 points.
No, he's not. He's right there.
So a lot can happen. But he even said, he's got 3 kids at home. And he's like, I'm here still because I know I can be fighting for the world championship.
Yeah.
Or else I would be at home with my family.
Yeah.
So.
And he still got it. But who do you think is better in that car, though, right now? Max or him?
I think the car is suited to Max.
Well, yeah.
Like, I think 100%. I mean, even just looking at previous history of Red Bull drivers and, whatever. And they've gone on record to say it. Alex Albon, also, all the drivers that have left Red Bull to say Max likes a car a very specific way, and it's hard to adapt to that from a different driver's perspective. And that's why they've had challenges with it. So it is tough. I think that Red Bull, we're starting to see the inner team drama, and definitely on social media after last race, some of the comments that were made about Checo winning and even Christian, saying, oh, well, you kind of lucked out with the safety car type of thing. It's starting to brew some of the drama that's happening on the back scenes.
For sure.
Now, we saw that last year in Brazil with the, let Checo through, please, let Checo through, and Max obviously didn't want to.
No, yeah.
So, I think they've moved past that, maybe, but I just still feel like I see the tension there.
Yeah.
And I think because it's a close battle, there's, they're athletes. So I think there's got to be a tipping point, similar to what we've seen in the past with everybody. And I know Rosberg and Hamilton, but also in 2021 with Lewis and Max, it was there had to be that point, the culmination of the buildup of the competition between two really elite, high caliber drivers.
Yeah, which was what race do you think? Silverstone.
It was Silverstone. Was 100% because that was the turning point. Max,
not Monza?
Monza, yeah, I mean, you could say Monza too. I think Monza in 2021 was Max was pissed about his pit stop. And it was he was just out of it at that point. Lewis, I think, was still in contention for the win because of just how things shook out. And then, when we got to Brazil, it was oh no, it's Max is all the way. And then it was okay.
Brazil was too late in the season. They was already tipped off by then. Yeah.
Silverstone, 100%.
Okay. That was the breaking point.
Because when you look at the season, And you look at Imola when, Lewis went off the track, and you look at some other areas, and we've talked about it, Max is the young, new, not world champion yet. Lewis is defending, whatever. You saw that build up. And then it just was like, okay, let's just go all out.
Yeah.
And where was it with Rosberg and Lewis? It was Barcelona, right?
Yeah.
At turn, and they took each other out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see it. We saw it with Vettel and Kimi when they the Red Bull took both of them out in Singapore. So there's a lot, there's things brewing. And I think if the continuation goes on, at this point, 5 out of 5 races have been Red Bull, and it's every other race. So Max, Checo, Max, Checo, Max. So the rate we're going, Checo should win in Imola.
Okay.
And it was whoever was going to win this weekend was going to be the championship leader. That's how close we were. So I may have cursed him because I told a lot of people, I was on social media like, we might have a new championship leader after tomorrow. Because I was like, oh my God, Checo, he looked so good. He looked confident. I think coming off of last weekend, it really built him back from Australia. And then Max was he was too fast and too furious.
Oh, yeah. You're right.
So.
He was on a mission, it seemed like, this weekend.
Yeah, he was motivated. He said P2 minimum. So.
Yeah, the speed at which he was passing people, it was, I was watching because Max was still on his hard tires, hadn't pit yet, and Checo was on his new set of mediums, and he was kind of like 18 seconds. He got down to 15 seconds, 14 seconds. And I was like, all right, so that's, it was like a 17-second pit stop window plus whatever the stop time was.
20 seconds in total.
Yeah, 20 seconds in total. So right now, in theory, once Max pits, Checo had, I think the best he had it was like a 5-second lead. And
yeah, it got down to 1.5.
It did. But see, the difference was, and they even said it, is that Max's engineer kept in the ear, kept telling him the distance, the gaps that were coming, and Checo didn't really get any radio information on what was happening, on whether or not he should push or anything like that. It just seemed like their two teams were totally different, and like you said, it got down where, oh man, the gap. I think Checo made a mistake. And it took, because one of the laps was like a second and a half different than the rest of the laps. And yeah, he was like, oh my man, he's barely going to be in front. Finally, Max made his pit stop, came out behind Checo, was about a second and a half. And then it was just a matter of.
It was like 2 laps.
Matter of 2 laps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
And it was over. As soon as it came out, I was like, oh, the gap is too close. Fresh set of medium tires. He's going to push hard till the end. So, speaking of still Red Bull, but something that's completely off topic, and I'm kind of curious on what other people think, and if they made it this far, please give me your answer. But there has been talk of Daniel Ricciardo, who's a reserve driver for Red Bull, of him going somewhere. He said, I'm going to be on the grid in 2024. I had a conversation with a fellow fan down in Indy, and he gave me his input on where he thinks he's going to end up. Where do you think Daniel's going to be?
The only place I can think of would be either AlphaTauri.
Whose seat then?
I don't know. They're both up this year, right? Nick and Yuki?
Correct.
I feel like Nick. It's just, depending on how. Red Bull is cutthroat. So
yeah, Nick has had bad luck.
He scored no points. It's been a very, very, very tough few races.
He's had a couple of things that were not his fault, and then he's done some things that were absolutely his fault. He's damaged the car a little bit. He's hit some people. He's very questionable. Yuki, on the other hand,
it's a hothead.
Yep, but gets points fairly regularly.
He the last 2 races he's been P11, so right on the cusp.
Just missing points now.
Yeah.
So there's debate on what, you're right.
This weekend, Nick DeVries did out-qualify Yuki, so we did see that for the first time out of the first 5 races. So either there or Williams because of Sargent. But I'm like, I feel like, because Alex Albon is signed, locked in for a couple years.
Yeah, he's not going anywhere.
I mean, he's certainly not going to any of the top teams.
No.
So, for me, it's got to be AlphaTauri. Especially with his relationship he's rebuilding with Red Bull.
So our fellow fan, Nindy, he said the same thing. He thinks it's going to be Yuki Tsunoda's spot.
Really?
Yep.
So why Yuki?
He just hasn't performed as well as he should have. He's required a whole lot of external help to get him to where he is right now, as far as mentally and trying to calm him down on the radio. And still he acts out a lot. Even this weekend.
So is that why Danny Ricciardo's trainer went to work with Yuki just to warm the seat?
It's possible. I guess so. Anything is possible, And I think I also heard at the end of the race that there could be a shakeup somewhere in one of the teams too. So I think some big news.
Well, there's going to be a lot of drama. There's a lot of people's contracts that are up. I think Carlos, obviously Lewis, George's contract is up at the end of this year. Checo's contract. I mean, there's a lot of people. Logan Sargent. Valtteri's locked in, but Joe. There's a lot of people who are up for contract. Yeah. We're already starting to see, obviously we've got, what's his name, from Ferrari going to AlphaTauri as the team principal next year. So it got a little crazy last year for silly season. Got a little silly.
Yeah.
So.
But, who's on the outs right now besides Daniel that would be able to come in and race in Formula One? Who would you like to see? Maybe this year's Formula 2 winner? That's the only other option, because who won last year was, I can't remember off the top.
Dragovic,
right? And he is a reserve driver at Martin. So he could be eligible too. Because really there's no other more age-appropriate driver out there that's ready to come across, unless it's going to be someone coming from IndyCar over like a Patrick O'Hare, O'Ward, Patrick O'Ward. Someone like him coming over, which could happen too.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't either.
There's the one photo that went viral this weekend of Daniel Ricciardo talking to Roman Grosjean with the McLaren team, and it was caption it, and it's come to IndyCar.
Yeah.
And, but interestingly enough, speaking of IndyCar, Lewis this weekend went on record to say that eventually when he's done with F1, he would want to drive an IndyCar.
Well, I'm sure he wants to probably come back.
If
live in America.
If Lewis goes to IndyCar, we're going to the Indy 500 every year.
Well, that he still might not race in the Indy 500, because that's a specific type of racing in the IndyCar series, and not every.
Fernando made it though, right?
He made it, but
just 1 year.
So he was Fernando was trying to do the Triple Crown thing.
Yeah.
All right. So he was.
Did he get Le Mans?
He won Le Mans. He's won Le Mans with his team and his teammates. He's obviously won Formula One.
Right.
He has not won the Indy 500. His best was he qualified, I think, 30th or 32nd.
It's so crazy how many drivers there are.
There are too many.
Yeah.
And he didn't even make it to the race because he didn't qualify.
I remember.
And so that's a totally different thing. Even Roman Grosjean doesn't do oval tracks. In IndyCar. He does the Grand Prix, which are totally different.
Well, probably because that's what he's used to from Formula One.
That, and you're talking super high speed. The cars in IndyCar in the oval tracks go higher speeds than anything they can do in Formula One, because Formula One just has braking zones and lefts and rights. You know what I mean? It's not just a It's not just a circle.
It's not NASCAR, everybody. No, it's not NASCAR.
But all those guys, even like Daniel Ricciardo, wants to drive a NASCAR car.
Well, that's because his hero is Dale Earnhardt.
Yeah, So there's a lot to be said about those other series. However, the pinnacle is still Formula One.
Of course.
And everyone I tell and I talk to, I say, IndyCar's cool, but everyone that's in IndyCar and NASCAR, I bet they wish they were in Formula One. And when people in Formula One tend to retire and leave the sport of Formula One, they kind of tend to go to IndyCar or NASCAR or Le Mans, a 24-hour distant race, so those types of that's what I say, and that's like the catch. And like honestly, it's catching on. Driver's Lives making it happen. Look how many celebrities were down in Miami. Hundreds it seemed like. I know. And you said there was influencer section.
Oh my God,
people were angry about it.
No, there was beauty brands that sent influencers to the Grand Prix. So, I mean, and I get it. It's because it is becoming a popular sport. I mean, you see beauty influencers go to like the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff just to stream content. I mean, there's Instagram people that I follow that were promoting just the NFL draft. And I'm like, why are they even talking about this? Like, I don't follow them to like hear about the NFL draft, but it's because of their outreach. So I get it. It's frustrating because even for us, I'm like, I go, okay, does this person even know Formula One? Like, do they even know who the drivers are, who the teams are, like who they're supporting? Or is it just like they're there just for the spectacle? So, and we can't get to that point where people are just there for the spectacle.
So speaking of the spectacle that is American Formula One,
about it.
Do you think with all of the requirements from all these drivers that they had to do, like all this press stuff that like McLaren drivers were doing? I was watching all kinds of videos. It was way more than it normally is anywhere else. Do you think that's taking away from them focusing on qualifying? Because look how terrible McLaren did. And I just think of all the other things that they were doing this weekend in particular, instead of focusing just on racing. Do you think that it's that's part of the spectacle is just too much for the drivers? And then the second part is, do we need Will.I.Am in the orchestra?
American is American.
Look, I enjoy Will.I.Am, and I think he can create the song, and I think he can do the whole orchestra thing for the lead up. I think that's all cool. But then we had LL Cool J leading or announcing WrestleMania style.
I know, but the thing is, when they said it, I was like, okay, what was it, 2017, 2018, when they did the Let's Get Ready to Rumble guy? That was kind of cool.
So they had to pay that.
That was cool, though, but like LL Cool J, I'm like, I kind of got the vibe with the WWE announcer or MMA or whatever he is. Mm-hmm. That was pretty cool. It was different. But then this was just, it felt so extra. It felt so just us, like American. Like we have to take it to the next level.
I mean, then even with the helmets and the jerseys for the winners,
everything.
Instead of just a hat. And
here's the thing: is they did give them the helmets, they gave them the jerseys. Thank God they didn't wear them on the podium.
They weren't forced because last year I have photos.
I know. So this year they were the white helmets, so they weren't the Pirelli ones. They got just the typical Pirelli hat, first, second, third, whatever. But they only came out in those. Okay. So, but yeah, last year I think we can all agree the helmets it was too over the top. It was a little too much.
It was.
It was like we are like the U.S. Miami Grand Prix is for some reason football themed, American football.
I think it's because it's at the Miami Dolphin Stadium, so they're playing into that fully.
Yeah.
The
trophy is the stadium.
Yeah.
The trophy's the stadium.
I'm not a fan of that, and I do like the colors of Miami that they tend to do because that is a Miami vibe. Mm-hmm. But they don't need to do the whole football thing.
Yeah,
I could do without the football thing.
Did Dan Marino give the trophy? He gave the trophies last year, right?
He did.
Yeah, this year he didn't, but
he probably had some other obligations.
Yeah, but I did learn that the Miami Dolphins are the only team that has ever gone undefeated in NFL history today.
No,
that's what it said on the screen.
It's wrong.
All right, so it was similar to Roger Federer being James Marsden.
Okay, and also more spectacular things. The grid walk, Martin Brundle grid walk, he finally made it all the way to the front of the grid, and they had it blocked off. And Sir Jackie Stewart was behind the line of not being allowed into like the A-list area. And
there's all these bodyguards.
Him and Martin Brundle said something because I think Martin Brundle was trying to get Roger Federer's attention. So
he got it.
Sir Jackie Stewart just broke through the line and walked up to Roger Federer, and all these security people were trying to push him away, but what are you going to do? The guy is knighted. He's a sir. Mm-hmm. He's a world champion. He's a world-class Formula One driver. You're going to tell him he can't be somewhere when he's probably invited by Formula One to be there.
He's there every weekend with the same green plaid on.
So, and so he went over to Roger Federer and got him to come over to Martin Brundle for an interview, which is just classic.
And he's so proud of it, too. Because there was a moment, I think, on Instagram after that Jackie posted about it. And he's so much smaller, and all these bodyguards holding back and all this craziness. So I feel like you're always going to get a funny moment during the grid walk in America. Yeah. That's for sure.
Well, because you get these celebrities there that, they've been invited. They don't really know much about it, so they're just kind of on this thing. They're like, why? I was told to be out here for a certain reason, probably because of all the cameras. Oh, and they're just oblivious to what's happening. I think more.
And then they don't know who the announcers are.
No, but.
So, like Meg Thee Stallion in Texas a few years ago, it's like, okay, Martin Brundle's coming up to her like, hey, like, give us a line, shoot us some bars. And she's like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Because they don't follow the sport that closely.
They don't.
To be able to watch it. But
we are seeing some more now, because look, Daniel Ricciardo went to the Met Gala, and he got approached by Anne Hathaway.
I love Formula One.
See?
Yes.
Big fan.
Yes.
Celebrity. And so it is happening. Look, Tom Cruise has been at tons of races. They're making a movie.
Oh yeah.
With Brad Pitt. He's going
to be on track in Silverstone with the teams driving a Formula One car for the 11th team.
One of the only human beings that can do that.
This is going to be a moment.
Yeah.
It's going to be a moment. So
so I don't know. I'm curious on what you guys think about the spectacle of America Formula One events. I think it's way over the top. I think they could dial it down a notch or two because last year when we were there, it was FTX was sponsoring everything, and look what happened to them. You know what I mean? And this year, I don't think it was. It was mostly crypto and there was a Gainbridge. And,
Gainbridge made a huge blowout for America.
So who knows what they were doing? But I just think all the crazy over the topness we could do without. I think
so. We could do without LL Cool J next year. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying we could do without the MMA style, WrestleMania style.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Whatever it is, the driver name, I forget what it is. It's like when the football teams enter the arena for the first time.
Yeah.
Their entrance or whatever, the driver entrance or whatever.
It was
because they already do a driver parade.
Yeah.
They already do the national anthem, which seemed like they were like, all right, we're cutting into that.
I know.
Time.
I thought we were gonna run out of time. The national anthem was really good though. The artist was like Gail, Gale.
Okay.
And she did a really good job. So. Like, we've seen some questionable national anthems in our time.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
We have.
What a weekend. We would have been there 99.9% sure this year if we didn't have other events going on. But
it's a busy season for us.
It's a busy Cinco de Mayo. It always falls on Cinco de Mayo. So.
It does. So I don't know. I think that pretty much wraps up the Miami GP. We didn't get any rain, no red flags, no safety cars.
We did get some good driving, some good overtakes.
Good overtakes, which is good for the track. I do like that.
Why are all the street circuits at the beginning of the year? Does it feel like there's a lot of...
When is Singapore?
Singapore's in October.
So that's at the end.
Yeah. Now, the other one big thing, you said this last year for Miami, that they're talking about with F1 is changing Miami to a night race.
They totally should.
Yeah, that would change the game for the track. Though,
so, yeah.
Because of the tire issue. So.
Yeah, they could. They should, because it's all containable within the compound of the Miami Garden, the stadium. Mm-hmm. So you could light up that whole entire area really well, like they do in Singapore, like they do, what are the other good night races? Bahrain, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's what they should do. Mm-hmm. I think it's no problem because it is a hot climate almost all year round down there.
It is. Hot and muggy.
When we were down there, it was extremely humid and muggy, and I'm sure it was. Some of the announcers during the weekend complained about how hot and muggy it was.
I mean, everyone was so excited too, like, oh, it's going to rain, but you're like, it's Florida rain.
Yeah.
It's going to rain.
But,
it did rain today. It rained on the way to the track.
Well, yeah.
Pouring rain.
And they also, about a month ago, had crazy flooding.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it does rain there. And it just tends, and this is a good time of the season for it just to be warm and hot down there. And
I think
it's eligible to be a night race.
Could be, yeah. Yeah. I think it could go either way. Like, I think this year, definitely with the changes, this Miami race was better than last year.
Yep.
I mean, of course, I always will enjoy a race in person more than on my, TV. But I think it was a lot better just from like a racing perspective, seeing the overtakes, seeing Max from Pete. Like the grid being shuffled up for qualifying just made today's race. It really did.
Yeah. Yep. So we just need more.
Okay, so we need like what is it?
From everyone.
We need reverse grids. Is what he's gonna say.
That's not gonna happen. I just think we need to see a little bit more mistakes here and there, and that's the cutthroatness of the qualifying. But it was good. It was. It was good moments. Qualifying was cool. Race was a little disappointing. We were hoping for somebody other than Red Bull, but it wasn't that way. It was.
I was hoping for Checo.
Yeah. So are most of the fans that seemed like they were at the race.
I know. We did say Miami is a Checo home Grand Prix, it feels like. Checo's got the most, it feels. Well, actually, never mind. Max has the 3 back-to-back in the summer.
Yeah.
But Checo has a huge, huge fan following, so.
He does. He does.
Texas. The American races are big for him, so.
Yep.
Overall, it was a good weekend.
All right. I guess, anything else for you?
No. Looking forward to a triple header coming soon.
Yeah. We're going to take a 1 week off, and then we're back in
Imola,
Italy. And, we'll see some upgrades, hopefully. And I'm excited for that. As I figure out what's going on with some of our technology issues that we have, I'm going to leave it there at that. So thank you. If you've made it this far, thank you. Please like, subscribe, comment, tell us what you thought of the race. We're very
Who's
curious.
going to win, Checo or Max next race?
So I guess until then, we'll see you later.
Yes.
Bye.